How aware are you of what's really going on in your mind? Hi, I'm Emily, a cognitive neuroscientist and host of Brain, Behavior, and Business, a podcast that combines the science of psychology with modern business and life. Previously, I've talked about how we don't really know what other people are thinking, but in reality, there's something even more surprising. We often don't know what we're thinking ourselves. There are three broad categories of thought: conscious, subconscious, and non-conscious. Today, I'm going to explain all three and connect them to business with examples. What is conscious thought? Conscious thought is any mental activity that we do deliberately. Generally, this is the idea that comes to mind for most people when they try to define thinking. This includes things like solving problems and planning. Basically, conscious thoughts are any time you are thinking with purpose, with effort, and possibly even finding it challenging. It also includes when you're intentionally paying attention to something with the idea of taking in information. A key factor here is that conscious thought comes with awareness. You might also think that this includes decision making, and it certainly can. However, a lot of decision making isn't a conscious process. What is subconscious thought? Subconscious thought is a mental activity that happens without awareness, but it could be brought into awareness with a small amount of effort. Subconscious thought can also be thought of as automatic thought. This type of thinking is actually really important. We process a lot of information in a day, and automatic processes allow us to deal with this volume efficiently. If something requires more deliberate thought, it can be brought into conscious attention, and if it's not, it stays at this level and is dealt with. The kinds of activities that fall under subconscious thought might be surprising. First, this is where a lot of decision making happens, even important decisions, but it also includes other activities like reading and driving. Subconscious thought also allows people to do two things at once, as long as one thing can operate at the subconscious level, like eating popcorn and watching a movie. The movie gets the conscious attention, and the eating is an automatic process. Does that mean I can multitask? No, absolutely not. Multitasking increases both stress and errors, impairs memory related to those tasks, and it increases overall completion time. In other words, the tasks take longer than they would have if they were done one by one. Usually when I tell people this, they say, "But I'm good at multitasking. This can't be true." Research actually shows that this finding is especially true for people who believe they are good multitaskers. Additionally, the negative results from multitasking research has been demonstrated in large-scale studies. This is not some one-off, obscure finding. What about multitasking in the workplace? You might be thinking that multitasking is just trying to do two things that you've chosen at the same time, but this isn't always the case. Research shows that even listening to someone else talk on the phone counts as a second task. In fact, participants made 6 times the number of errors than if a two-person conversation was overheard. We think the reason that listening to half of a conversation is worse is because it takes more mental energy to understand a conversation when you only hear half of it. This becomes an issue in businesses with open concept workspaces. Employees can overhear parts of other conversations that are not relevant to them, and it can increase errors in their own work. Just to note, these people aren't listening intentionally, they are actually trying to do their jobs. What is non-conscious thought? Non-conscious thought is any mental activity that cannot be brought to conscious awareness and cannot be explained. Examples of this include having a thought pop in your mind, learning a skill but being unable to explain how to do it, or even when you know you've learned something but you can't name it. Here's a prime example I ran into. In university, I took German language classes. In German, you can put adjectives in any order. For example, you could say the white, large house in German. But to me, that sounded bad. In English, we would say the large, white house. That's because in English, there's an order to adjectives. The order goes opinion, so things like cheap or beautiful, size, age, shape, color, origin, think things like nationality, like Italian wine, material, like fabric or steel, and purpose, like party and party hat. Nobody ever taught me this. I certainly never learned this formally like in an English class, but I did learn this rule implicitly by hearing people speak English. In fact, a lot of grammar is acquired this way. How can asking a simple question relate to non-conscious thought? A study was done in which participants had to use a photocopier, but while they were using it, they were interrupted by a researcher. At this point, one of 3 circumstances occurred. Some participants heard, "Excuse me, can I use the photocopier?" A third of the time, the researcher added, "Because I have to make copies." A third of the time, the researcher added, "Because I'm in a rush." A third of the time, no additional words were added. Now, being in a rush is a good reason to let someone go ahead. But mindlessly, the participants allowed the researcher to go ahead in all situations. Essentially, the participants heard the request, but not the content or its meaning. You'll see this kind of thing in advertising as well. For example, gluten-free strawberry syrup. Strawberries don't have gluten in them. And before you ask, none of the other added fruit contains gluten because no fruit contains gluten. If you don't think about it too hard, this makes the product more attractive to people who are buying gluten-free. But if you think about it a little longer, it doesn't make sense. This type of product doesn't contain gluten to begin with. Are you leading your business, or is your brain leading you? There are 3 things to keep in mind when it comes to your business. You, your employees, your customers are all operating with both subconscious and non-conscious thought a lot more than you realize. You can override non-conscious thought with effort, and not a lot if you're aware of it, which you now are. Also, when it comes to big decisions, check in with yourself and see if you're really thinking them through. In the same vein, if you're finding that you're going through your day and not really sure what you did at the end, that's also a cue to pay attention to see if your non-conscious thoughts are driving your day productively. And by productively, I mean in the direction you want it to go. If yes, great. If no, you have the power and awareness now to make changes. More importantly, though, you have to lean into this reality. A lot of how your business is run, both by you and your employees, and how your clients and customers interact with it, is done automatically. This doesn't mean make gluten-free strawberry syrup necessarily, although it absolutely can involve improving your product labeling and descriptions to guide customers into buying your product with only a few seconds of processing time. It also means things like making a website that functions like expected, so it's easier and faster to use. It means software that's easy to use and doesn't require a lot of attention, meaning here that the software doesn't unnecessarily burden the person using it. It means consistently putting the stapler refills in the same place. It means finding out that an employee is going to leave before they even know it themselves. Making these kinds of improvements allows your employees, clients, and customers to use subconscious thinking where it's safe, fast, or accurate, and conscious thought where it's needed. Finally, this is why getting a skilled psychologist involved is so important. I'm trained to help get answers for your business that do not necessarily involve conscious thought. I can lean into the non-conscious and subconscious thoughts of your employees and clients to optimize your business at a level you absolutely, literally cannot any other way. I cannot stress this enough. Our lives run on thoughts that we are not aware of. It's important to make those thoughts guide your life and business in the right direction. And the only way to find out what those thoughts are in the people who drive your business is to get an expert like me in to investigate. Do you remember a time when the solution to a problem came to you when you weren't even thinking about it? I certainly can, and I'd love to hear from you. Curious about taking these ideas further? I share more about my work and how I help clients at emilymalmbeck.ca. You can also reach me at any time at research@emilymalmbeck.ca. Thanks for listening.